Hey yo, it's Gluke. Welcome back. Today we're talking about pitch versus harmonics. Let's go. Whoa. Alrighty. So here we are back in Ableton. And today I wanted to cover a really important topic when it comes specifically to sound design. What's the difference between pitch and harmonics? It can get pretty confusing because they use a lot of the same terms, such as fifths, octaves, stuff like that. But when it comes to sound design, different waveforms are going to sound different, and you could have probably assumed that without watching this video, but we're going to talk about why. And so just to start off with, a waveform is a set of instructions that we're giving the speaker. So here we're telling the speaker to push out all the way, snap all the way back in, and then push out again, and it's going to keep doing that motion of like whack, 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 whack. If we swap it over to a sine wave, it's a lot smoother of a motion, but we can still play the same notes with both of these, but they're going to sound different. Why? Well, in order to understand why these two waveforms make different noises, what we need to do is look at the physical characteristics of each waveform, and that'll help us start to infer what other waveforms are going to sound like. And so we know that a sine wave is going to be the least harmonically rich waveform that we can use. So that's why I've put it over here with least noise. And if we play a tone with a sine wave, it's only going to generate that one tone. But if we don't have anything to compare this to, we could just assume that every waveform is only going to make the tone that we're playing. If we look at the other end of the spectrum here on the spectrum of noise, we can see that a saw wave is the most harmonically rich wave that we can generate. And the largest difference between these two waveforms in terms of physical characteristics is that the saw wave has this gigantic snap that the speaker has to perform in order to play it. Whereas with this sine wave, it's very smooth and gradual in every direction. So what does that actually look like? Well, here I've got a saw wave loaded up, and I'll go ahead and put a spectrum on this channel. And if we go ahead and draw in a C note, we should see lots and lots of activity across the spectrum. Okay, amazing. So I turned off the volume because I don't really want to hear that the whole time I'm talking. But we can see that there's a spike at C3, which is the note that we're playing, and that would be the pitch of the instrument. And we can also see that there are spikes going all the way up the frequency. If we look at this next spike here, this is C4, and then the next spike here is going to be G4, which is a fifth away from C, and then we have another spike here, which is going to be C5, and then we have another spike here, which is E5, which is a major third away from C, and we have G5, which is a fifth away from C again, but we're going from E5 to G5, and so every time we climb and look at the next spike, we can see that it's going to be closer and closer to the previous spike, and that is essentially the basis of the harmonic series. So the harmonic series is a way for us to understand harmonics using intervals. So to answer the question at the beginning of this, what is pitch versus harmonics? Harmonics is going to be the sound of the instrument and all of the accompanying frequencies that come with that. And pitch is going to be the actual frequency we are playing with the instrument. So our fundamental or our first harmonic is essentially the pitch that we're playing. So if we were to play a C and it was 256 hertz, this would be our fundamental. Now if we add 256 to itself, we get 512, and that's our first octave. So we get C, and we're now at our second harmonic. All we've done is cut the wavelength in half. And so now we have 2 cycles in the frame instead of 1. If we do this again and add 256 to 512, we get 768. This is our perfect fifth. And as we begin to climb up the harmonic series, we can see that with a saw wave, all of these notes are hit. So when I say that the saw wave is the most harmonically rich, it means that every single harmonic is going to be played when we play a saw wave. Now, if we go back in and I change this waveform to a sine wave, when we look at the spectrum, we should see only one spike where the note is that we're playing. Okay, again, I've turned it off just so that I don't have to listen to that. But we can see here one big spike right there. And if I had to guess, is C3, just like the other big spike. So this is our fundamental. And you see all these little spikes over here. This is all just digital noise. And we're not actually hearing this because it's super, super quiet, but because this is a computer, it's going to pick it up anyways. So if all that makes sense, and we know that sine waves are the least harmonic and saw waves are the most harmonic, we can start to figure out and understand the basis of pretty much all EDM sound design here. We have a fundamental, and then we're going to have some other stuff on top that's going to change how this sounds. So I've written us this project here, and it's pretty simple. And what we're going to do is start to fill in more of the noises, and we're going to take a look at how the different harmonics affect the sounds that we're adding. So here's what it sounds like right now.
kick back, kick back. I'ma kick back, kick back. I'ma kick back.
And then it just starts to repeat itself, and then we go back into the build, and then we're back in the drop again. If we look at what we already have here, if you know what song I took these chords from, go ahead and try to leave a comment if you can. That would really be great. We can see here we've got a lot of notes. And if we look at the waveform, we're also playing a saw. And if I turn off this filter, we'll hear the saw at its full power. And so obviously this is a really, really loud and intense sound. And so the reason why I've added a filter with a little bit of automation is so that at the start of the sound, we get some of that pluck by allowing more of the higher harmonics to come through. And then as the filter begins to go down, it becomes less and less intense. And so that way we can start to shape the sound how we want. We can also change the slope of the filter here and make it a bit more aggressive. What we can also do is start to add maybe another oscillator, and that way we're going to add another set of harmonics into our signal. And so what I might try to do is we'll go ahead and pick another saw wave, and with this one I'm going to add bend, and let's see how that changes the sound. And I'll put this through the filter as well. So that sounds kind of interesting. I'll go ahead and add some sync as well. With sync, we're adding more versions of it into the same frame. If we go ahead and look at the other ones with pulse width, we can change the amount of time that this takes up within one frame, and it'll start to get squished over to one side. And what this is going to do is introduce higher harmonics because we're moving the speaker faster, but we're still playing at the same frequency or the same pitch. I'll go ahead and turn off oscillator A so we can actually hear that. And then looking at asymmetric, the plus and minus just means which side of the waveform that we're using. But if I go ahead and crank up the asymmetric, what it's doing is it's making the first half quicker and the second half shorter. And so these are all different ways that we can manipulate the harmonics of these waveforms to get the sound that we're looking for. So I like the sort of squelchy sound that we get off of bend plus. I'll go ahead and turn everything back on. And if I add a bit of sync, it has a bit more of a slap-like impact at the beginning of the sound. And that's because we're generating a lot of really high harmonics and then cutting them off rapidly with the filter. But we've immediately added another dimension to this sound just by changing the sync and the bend a little bit. So that sounds good enough for me. Now, obviously, we could do something more interesting with these vocals, but the main focus of this video is going to be sound design. So let's go ahead and look at the drop where we have tons of room to mess with. What we've got going on here in this bass group is that we have an operator bass, and this is an FM bass, and what we're doing is we have oscillator 1 set to the fundamental, or the pitch of the notes that we're playing. And then we have the course set to our 4th harmonic interval, which is 2 octaves above. And that's frequency modulating A, and C is frequency modulating B, which is also then modulating A. But what we can start to do is change the overall timbre of the sound by increasing the decay on this B. And for C, I'm keeping the decay really short so that we have this as more of a snap at the beginning of the sound. So let's leave it like that and see how it sounds. It's a bit too sustainy. I want it more plucky. Okay, I think that sounds fine. So now that we've got our bass dialed, let's go ahead and just start adding noises to all of the empty spots in this drop, and we'll start experimenting with different sounds and different harmonics. Okay, perfect. So now we have an A, a B, an A, and then a C structure in the drop here with talking about our response noises. So let's go ahead and start to figure out what we actually want. So I want kind of a powerful sound here, I think. So what I'll do is I'll first put the LFO on here because I don't want it playing the entire time. And then I'll go ahead and bring the octaves down. So now we have a sub layer, and then we'll go ahead and add another sine wave, make sure that that's automated. And we'll add some compression, we'll add some distortion.
kick back,
And then what I've done is this is playing our D sharp, the actual MIDI note. And then on this one, I've increased the semitones +4, so it's playing a major third 2 octaves above this one. And what that's going to result in is a bit more of a warmer sound because we're really emphasizing that major third.
kick back, kick,
Now I'm going to go ahead and put these in the bass section here.
kick back, kick back,
Now I do want it to be a bit more aggressive.
back,
So what we could try doing is maybe do a bit of frequency modulation from B, or we could do phase distortion. And so what that's going to do is help boost the harmonics from this oscillator into this oscillator.
kick back,
And then for this fill, I hear sort of something that plays off this offbeat.
I'ma kick back,
Maybe I want this one to be really, really plucky.
I'ma kick back, 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 kick back.
Now that I hear it, this should be a bit higher pitched. Could do with a bit more distortion. Okay, and then this one I hear sort of like a saw wave filtered respace kind of thing. And so what we're going to do to make this, we'll put one in the sub, and we'll just detune this one. And then cut off the highs, and then we'll add some fuzz, and that's literally it. So now we've got sort of the basic sounds that we're looking for here in the fills. So now let's start adding some higher synths. And this is where things can be a lot more fun because we get to play with stuff like reverb and echo. So I want this to kind of sound like an organ. So I think what I'm going to do here is maybe add some sine waves, and then I'll do sync on this one. Okay, let's go ahead and pick a more interesting filter. Okay, and let's add another, and this time we're just going to make a chord in Serum. So this one will be +7, this one can be +4, I guess. This one, we usually want up an octave. Oh, whoa, there we go. And then this one we'll put 2 octaves above, so that way we have our third on top, then our fifth, and then our root. So that's really all that I can explain about the difference between harmonics and pitch. When it comes to being able to recognize different harmonics and stuff like that, all it comes down to really is practice. So like the more that you listen to what a fifth sounds like as opposed to an octave, you'll be able to better tell in the future. But the primary goal of the video today is to show you the difference between pitch and harmonics and how it relates to sound design here. So when we're making basses and stuff like that, what we're really doing is we're mainly just playing the same note in the MIDI, and then we're changing things in the Serum patch itself in order to get different sounds out of it. And different physical shapes of waveforms are going to sound different because we're moving the speaker in different ways. So I hope that this video made sense. I'll go ahead and freeze everything here and then put this project file on the Patreon so that you can steal all these sounds and drums. Just make sure you have Ableton 12 and you'll be good to go. But for now, that's all I really got for you. So if you enjoyed this or found it interesting, be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to hit the bell so you know when I post brand new videos, and we'll see ya in the next one.